Brasil. Chapter 1, Intro Life in Spain. May 2005, in the south of Spain. Sun, beach, the sea, and mucho amor. After a chaotic beginning of this year, professional as well as emotional, I found for me and my 13-year-old son, Michael, a life like in paradise. In April, I leased for us a nice furnished apartment in Torremolinos, province of Malaga in the south of Spain. From there to the beach it is only a 10-minute walk, and I'm taking full advantage of this with Max, our small black mongrel. Every morning we go for a 2-hour beach walk. It is wonderful to watch the dog run and play around in the sand. Because he loves the beach and the sea, just like me, and is not afraid of the big waves. If I throw sticks into the water, he jumps after them eagerly and happily. Mostly I allow myself the luxury and sit on the beach terrace of one of the many cafes along the promenade, having a cup of coffee or two, enjoying the sea view. Michael quickly got used to the new environment and his new school. Like everywhere, he found new friends very soon. This time, I'm sure I did it right. Michael and I were always very close to each other. My son keeps no secrets towards me. On the contrary, he's very open-minded with me, and I always know where he is. Sure, there are problems sometimes and arguments because of his juvenile age, but these happen in the best families. One thing is certain, I love my son more than anything and will always love him. For my son, I would have done anything just to see him happy. This alone counts for me. For this reason I overcame my disgust towards Chris and tried to maintain a friendly relationship with him. Chris was almost 3 years my companion and practically Michael's stepfather. From time to time Michael spends the weekend with him in El Palo to maintain contact with his best friend Miguel. I take him some Friday evenings in the 90 kilometers distant town and pick him up again on Sunday evenings. For me this is always a reversion to a chapter already closed. 3 years of hell with Chris, a Nigerian who made his living with the fraud and international drug trafficking. This had become clear to me only after we moved in together. Nevertheless, he was always good to Michael and able to set limits when needed. I had long planned the separation from Chris. Emotionally, I already disconnected and felt antipathy for this man who had systematically tried to destroy my life. When I was offered a job in March at a magazine publisher, I took my chance and looked for a new home for Michael and me. I wanted nothing to do with the dirty business of Chris. Unfortunately, I didn't keep the job long because the boss couldn't pay my salary or didn't want to pay it. Now my only concern is to find a new job. I still have reserves from the sale of the bar I had started in Spain and also put money on the side when I worked the year before in Gibraltar for an online betting company, receiving a very high salary in British pounds. But without regular income, I felt neither well nor safe. Therefore, I'm spending most of the day reading job advertisements in newspapers on the internet, writing job applications, and rushing from one interview to another. It is not easy to find a job in Spain. Sure, for 500 euros I could have found something immediately and everywhere, but this amount alone is the monthly rent for our apartment. This can't discourage me too much, though, and certainly doesn't stop me from enjoying life. The beach and living my passion, swimming in the sea. If I don't have the time to go to the beach, I swim in the pool in our apartment complex. During weekends, I spend much time in one of the many internet cafes in the center of Torremolinos, owned by Jones, a good friend of mine. Since I don't have my own computer anymore, I write the job applications and my emails here. My new German friend, Doris, who lives in Spain like me, has a son in Michael's age, and also had moved out recently of the shared home with her ex-partner. Unfortunately, she now lives in an apartment about 150 kilometers away, so we have no other choice but phone calls or emails to one another. Furthermore, there is Cesar from Chile, whom I had met in Peru, where we became good friends. Since our joint vacation in Brazil, we are in permanent email contact. Celia Flores, a friend I met in Brazil, sends 1 or 2 emails a week. This is a challenge for me, as she writes in Portuguese, and amongst other friends and people I know is also my daughter, with whom I keep contact via phone and internet. Between us never existed the best relationship, but due to the distance, she lives with her Nigerian husband and their 2 children in Hamburg. At least we have no arguments. Most of my Spanish friends live in Fuengirola, the city I had started in Spain, or rather mis-started. Should an interview take me into the city, I visit them. Otherwise, I feel too cumbersome and it's just getting too far for me. Some Saturday nights I go out to my favorite Spanish disco, enjoying the fiestas, good atmosphere. For a short while I can forget how much I still suffer from the separation of Jefferson, my Brazilian boyfriend. In the beginning, a holiday flirt in Fortaleza, but soon it turned serious. In the disco I like dancing to the sound of salsa, rumba, and reggaeton. I do flirt, but don't let anyone approach me. This certain Saturday night, though, when my eyes meet those of a spicy, attractive Argentinian, everything changes. As he dances closer towards me, I get goosebumps, but keep cool at first, pretending to have no interest. So easily he doesn't give up, and finally wants to know my name. He asks me in an irresistible, funny manner, ¿Cómo te llamas? Mi nombre es Maria. I just have to laugh, so he hastens to explain he's sharing a house with friends and does the dishwashing, laundry and cleaning. Therefore, everybody calls him Maria. Besides his attractive appearance, I like his sense of humor. After actually having coaxed me for my name and invited me for a drink, we dance together. When the music slows down, he pulls me close to him. It feels very good in his arms, just like in the past with Jefferson. And then comes what I've heard 1,000 times. I must see you again. Give me your phone number. I'm not making it easy for him, although I have no objection to seeing him again. I suggest for him to give me his number. I'll call you. I cannot do that, sorry, is his answer. Aha. Forget about it, amigo, is my thought. But then he explains he calls himself very rarely, to be precise, never, and therefore doesn't remember his number. Even though it makes me laugh again, I come down from the bar chair and I'm about to leave when he restrains me gently by the arm. It occurred to him he has somewhere in his wallet a scrap of paper with his house phone number for emergencies. Pouring the entire contents of his wallet onto the bar and searching between banknotes, coins, and identification documents for the little slip of paper, it bothers him very little that the bartender gives the whole scene a strange look, watching him and me as I double up laughing. A crazy hooray scream tells me he found the piece of paper. Giving it to me, he asks me with an irresistible puppy dog look in his eyes, "You give me your number now?" I really can no longer argue and give him my number. He immediately saves it in his cell phone. Now I really want to go home. Luciano accompanies me to the parking lot and asks if I am not accidentally passing the Avenida San Miguel, the shopping mile of the Romolinos. Yes, I live in Los Alamos, slips out of my mouth. Thus, it is arranged for him that I give him a lift. Arriving at my car, he proposes we meet next time at a car wash. What? I ask, confused. Your car needs a wash badly. Maria also washes cars, you know. Laughing, I have to admit he's absolutely right, 'cause I really don't take very good care of my car. Wash it 3 times a year at most, and certainly it looks it. I am driving toward the center while he tells me his father lives in the Avenida San Miguel, and he will spend the night there. Not one moment he tears his eyes from me. He's a lot younger than me. Curious, I asked him his age. 25. Uh-oh, set him off and forget it, I think with terror. He could be my son. How old are you? Luciano interrupts my thoughts. How old do you think I am? 28 or 29, perhaps? Startled, I make an emergency break. I am well aware I look much younger than 44, and certainly don't feel like a woman above 40. Many may find this inviolable, but for me it is sometimes like a curse. I absolutely cannot deal with men of my age. Instead, I always find myself in relationships with younger men. Chris is 31, and Jefferson, my Brazilian ex-boyfriend, is 35. Thus, the two already belong to the senior league. So how old are you now? Luciano interrupts my thoughts again. Count 10 years on top, is my cautious reply. Finally, we reach the Avenida San Miguel. But instead of getting out, Luciano pulls me into his arms and kisses me passionately. Almost 2 hours we are sitting inside the car, him kissing and caressing me tenderly. As the sun rises, I push him away and observe, I am tired and I need to sleep. Let me go home. It is clear he wants more, but I'm emotionally not ready, because I still cling to Jefferson. Luciano doesn't show his disappointment and kisses me goodbye with a promise. I'll call you tomorrow. I must see you again. The passenger door is already closed, but he is dangling halfway through the window for one last kiss. Advises me to close the window so no one robs me. I have to chuckle about so much concern. Back at home, Max is greeting me, jumping up and down on me for joy like a rubber ball. My heart still beats faster than normal. Then my look falls on the portrait photo of Jefferson, and I remember the night before my departure from Sao Paulo. The evening had ended in this terrible conflict because Jeff tried to pressure me to stay in Sao Paulo with him. But without Michael, I could have never thought of it. And for Michael it was inconceivable to go to Brazil. I came back to Spain with you, and now you want to go to Brazil without me. If this is what you want, you can go alone. Apparently, it seems to me my destiny to drop myself into relationships which are hopeless right from the beginning. But if I love someone, I do it with all my heart. And for Jeff, I would have gone through hell. But my son is and remains for me the dearest thing in the world, and the separation is unimaginable to me. Luciano calls me the same Sunday in the afternoon with the words, Soy Maria y quiero hablar con Rita. Laughing, I only reply, idiota. Whereupon he teases, ya tú hablas andalú. I like his humor better every time, and I let him persuade me to meet him the next day. Before I am on my way to pick up Michael from El Palo, I call Doris to tell her about my last night's acquaintance. Laughing, she comments, "Well, it's about time you do fall in love with someone who lives a bit closer instead at the other end of the world." "I'm not in love, and I'm not intending to fall in love. The boy's 25 and could be my son," I say indignantly. Whereupon Doris counters, "So what? What's the meaning of age difference? My ex is 65, 22 years older than me. Why should there be a difference if the man is younger and the woman older?" Our meeting the next evening begins with a fiasco. Luciano is more than late, and I feel pretty stupid sitting in a beach restaurant waiting for him. Also, he's calling me every 10 minutes, giving me another excuse. I am already angry, actually more with myself than with Luciano. Finally, I am shouting into the cellular phone, "If you are not here in 10 minutes, I'm gone." "Espere por mí, por favor," he pleads, explaining he lives high up in the mountains in the village Choriano, far away from Malaga, and it is very difficult to get away from there. Since I know this village, I know he's telling the truth. But he knew this before, so this is no excuse for me. With his next call, he lets me know he has indeed now arrived at the beach promenade, but in a restaurant about 2 kilometers away from where I am waiting. This is enough for me. I am on the way to my car. I spit out when he asks me where I am, pay for my 2 cafes and 3 colas, and head for my car. Just as I am about to unlock it, a taxi's coming along, stopping rudely, and out of it jumps Luciano, walking up to me, taking me in his arms and kissing me tenderly. When I look into his open, cheeky smile, my anger is already forgotten. He excuses himself once more because he arrived very late from work, and his schedule was totally messed up. Luciano works as a bricklayer in different places, therefore he's on the road for days at a time. We are going for a long walk on the beach, and I learn almost everything about him and his life. In between, he makes me laugh with his jokes. Finally, we sit down on a terrace of a beach bar listening to Latin music. Luciano invites me for a drink, and as an ambulant rose seller comes by, he buys me a rose and hands it to me with a kiss. My goodness, how long since I've been given flowers by a man. I feel so good, like I haven't for a long time. The beach, the sea, and Luciano. The following weeks we have similar meetings, romantic walks, or dinner in restaurants. Every time I get to know him better. He is consistently in a good mood. We play and joke, and I feel like 20 again. With few exceptions, he is so wonderful, easy, and uncomplicated. But when he notices the picture of Jefferson on the screen of my cell phone, he wants to know who it is, and why I saved the photo on my phone. I confess to him my unhappy love to Jefferson. Luciano says nothing, and only listens to me. With time I get used to his unreliability and take it calm. When he says 7 o'clock at night, I know I don't need to expect him before 9 o'clock at night. And despite the fact that we cannot see each other every day because of his erratic work, we get closer to each other every day. The next time I talk to Doris and tell her about Luciano, she teases me. "Will you still claim you're not in love?" For Michael, it is also clear and can't be hidden that there is a new man in my life. My daily routine: the walk on the beach with Max, reading and answering emails, studying, recruitments, writing job applications, and going to job interviews continues. However, now everything is a little lighter and flows easier. And on days when I'm really down because nothing gets going concerning a job, it's Luciano who cheers me up again with his humor. The next time Michael spends a weekend in El Palo, I allow Luciano for the first time to accompany me home. His gaze falls on the portrait of Jefferson, but again he remains silent. We spend almost the entire weekend in bed and leave the house just to eat somewhere on the beach. Again and again, Luciano asks, ¿Tú quieres amor? My answer each time, contigo siempre. In fact, I'm seriously falling in love, but wonder where it will end. Luciano, our age difference is too much. Let us stop this before it gets too serious and we hurt each other. But Luciano doesn't want to know nothing of it. I'm not interested in these young chicks. The persistent unemployment now begins to strain my nerves. I have to think of something I should do, because I don't want to wait until my money is totally used up. The idea to open up a bar again starts to take forms, but this time I want to do things differently. I dream of a bar with a dance floor and live music. This I discuss with Bob, an English friend of mine. Everything he touches turns to gold, but as a typical Englishman, his enthusiasm for Latin music is indeed limited, and therefore he falls out as a potential partner. Next to the job search, I'm also looking for a suitable bar or nightclub and potential partners. My day consists suddenly of 24 hours, and to make matters worse, my parents let me know they're coming to visit. As if I don't have enough to do, I go to find a suitable hotel for them, because my apartment is too small to accommodate my parents. But bookings from Spain are simply too expensive. Therefore, I search by internet and find a very favorable package with flight and hotel, which is practically next door to us. I call my parents, pass the dates, and advise them to go to a travel agency for a booking as soon as possible. In one of my emails to Celia, I mentioned my idea of the dance bar with live music. As a producer of a salsa band and sister of the band leader, Carlos, she knows the matter very well and gives me advice. Since my last visit in Sao Paulo, I am an absolute fan of Carlos' band, Salsa Bomba, and could perfectly imagine such a group in my bar. Celia likes my idea very much, and we start to consider strategies for how we can bring the band to Spain to earn money needed for a bar, because the rents alone cost between 1,000 and 5,000 euros a month. Everything changes, and instead of looking for empty clubs and discos, I go to full ones advertising the CD of Salsa Bomba, the band's music. One concert promoter and DJ in Fuengirola plays the tracks of the CD in the club. The music goes very well with the guests. The dance floor is full. The people like it. But he makes it clear to me from the start that he will not sponsor the band, nor is he going to organize any more live concerts. He shows me pictures of the great stars from the reggaeton scene, like Daddy Yankee and Jimmy Bad Boy. He brought to Spain, telling me there was a lot of trouble and he had to pay more on top rather than earn, but he's willing to help me find a sponsor for the band. Together with his business card, he gives me a list of radio stations I should contact first. All the information I pass, of course, via email to Celia, who answers me the same day that she's totally excited about my project. However, she bombards me with the license rights and laws concerning reproduction and publication. Jones, who draws the meter-long emails from the printer, asks somewhat surprised, "Tell me, what on earth are you doing?" "I think I'm in the middle of the music business," I say, a little uncertain. Next, I contact the radio stations, get invited, the people listen to the CD, and the tracks released for publications are stored for replay in computers. Everywhere I leave my phone number and email address of Salsa Bomba. After several days, I finished off all the radio stations that specialize in Latin music. I treat myself to a little relaxation on the beach, for which I didn't have time at all lately. I'm thinking things over. Also, I like what I do, but unfortunately I earn no money with it. Well, not yet at least. All this stresses me out, and I find myself sometimes even irritated with Luciano, especially when he asks one evening, "You still love this Jefferson, right?" With Luciano, I have a relationship without a future. My business brings no money. I find myself in a dead end, and in every respect. Why on earth do I always complicate my own life like this? Finally, there are also men like Rita, an Arab who has been living in Spain for 20 years, an independent owner of a company with a big house and no suffering financial difficulties. He would marry me on the spot, but I just can't do these things. For this, I'm just too emotional. I growl at Luciano. You ask me, who of us has always these mysterious phone calls, for example, with this Ivana? But to argue with Luciano is simply not possible. If I'm making secret phone calls, then certainly not in your presence. Ivana is my aunt. Such a stupid excuse I really have to laugh about. But Luciano is adamant that she is his aunt. Talking to Doris about the subject, she's taken the side of Luciano. He's right. If he was calling another woman, he would certainly not do it when he's with you. And that he is more often now, although I never know exactly when. He usually appears in the middle of the night, still in working clothes. One night, he wants to call his father, but has no credit on his cell phone. I give him mine and he gives me his, so I look up the number of his father. I go through the list of names, noticing hardly any women's names, except Ivana and one other. When I arrive at my own name, I read not only Rita, but behind the name he has written the word Divina. I'm touched. Does he really see me as his goddess? I say nothing, just simply give him a kiss. Also, he knows that I looked up the list of names of his mobile phone. He makes no comment about it. After much back and forth, my parents cancelled their visit because the man in the travel agency advised them not to travel to Spain now, as it is currently too hot. Instead, to travel in September, as it would be more pleasant for them. I can only laugh and ask my mother, has that agency employee ever been to Spain? I think I can judge better when it is hotter. And at the moment, it is still not as hot as in September. Yes, but the car also must go in the workshop, and that costs a lot. All at once we cannot afford it. Also, I am afraid with my leg, and we don't speak Spanish. Suddenly, there are lots of excuses. I have the impression that my father would like to come to Spain, but my mother doesn't. And what she wants is the law. I'm not going to discuss it further with her. It just annoys me to have wasted my time with her vacation planning. With short words, I end the conversation. A few days later, my father calls to promise they will surely come in September. Still angry, I answer curtly, well, you have to know yourself if and when you want to come to Spain. Not in my dreams I would have thought that this is one of the last calls with my father, and I'd never see him again. By my daughter, I learned 2 weeks later my parents went on holiday to the Baltic Sea. At the age of 74 years, and with a weak heart, it is irresponsible that my father sits 5 hours or 6 hours behind the steering wheel of his car. But this is my mother. She wants to go each and every year to the Baltic Sea, and probably wailed and complained until my father agreed on holidays at the Baltic Sea. I continue with the campaign for Salsa Bomba successfully and keep permanently in touch with Celia. At some point, we speak about the fact that I should come to Sao Paulo to listen to new compositions by Carlos and accompany some of the shows, and to see Jefferson again shoots through my head. Since the holidays are just around the corner, I discuss the idea with Michael. But as always, I get a rebuff from him. I have no desire to go to Brazil. What am I going to do there? I don't know anyone and don't understand the language. somehow I must agree with him. Sao Paulo is not exactly the place for an almost 14-year-old boy. And as I listen to my mailbox this evening and hear Luciano's voice saying that he misses me and wishing me a good night, I am convinced it isn't the right place for me either. Vacation I have here, every day outside the house, and I am happy with Luciano. Why am I not simply ticking off the chapter with Jefferson? 10 long days. Luciano and I don't see each other, since he's away on a job. So I'm looking forward to the next evening, all the more because Luciano has promised to take me to the feria in Fuengirola. The feria is a traditional celebration in honor of the Holy Virgins, and it is taking place during the summer months in all towns at different times. Nowadays, it is a popular festival, and for 1 week everything stands still because all the people are celebrating. Michael is too old to go out with his mother. Moreover, he gets embarrassed every time I speak Spanish with someone in his presence, because his Spanish is, unlike mine, really perfect. The next evening, I'm waiting for Luciano, and wait and wait and wait. On the phone, I cannot reach him, and finally I drive alone to Fuengirola and stop at my favorite cafe. It's the cafe where it all began and where I met my two friends, Juan and Pepe. This night I only meet Pepe, who is like my surrogate father. We drink some café con leche, and I tell him about my worries. Finally, I get myself on the way to the place where the festival is, with dancing and folklore performances, shows, music, and much more. Just as I found a parking space, Luciano's call reaches me. I am more than angry, and let him know that before he even gets a chance to explain anything. When my tantrum is over, Luciano attempts to change my bad mood with his cheerful humor, but soon realizes that tonight it is of no use. So he tries it with his submissive way and excuses himself that he had only just returned from work and would love to see me after this long day. And what shall I do now, in your opinion? It is 11:30 and I'm in Fuengirola, I note with irritation. Please, please don't be angry with me. Tomorrow is Saturday and I'll stay the entire weekend. You determine what we are doing, okay? He relents, and finally, with his smooth talking, he manages again to make me forget my anger. It does not bother him that I'm alone at the feria, but suddenly I feel very tired and not in the mood for the feria anymore. Without even getting out of my car, I am on my way home. Michael still knows nothing of Luciano, and I'm not ready yet to introduce them. Therefore, I take Michael this Saturday morning to El Palo again. Luciano and I meet in the afternoon at the beach restaurant, where we are already permanent guests. He invites me to dinner, 2 hours late, of course. Afterwards we go, reggaeton music at full volume, in high spirits along the beach to my home, where Luciano shows me how much he has missed me. He wants to know more about me, and I show him my photo collection. In between, we kiss and tenderly make love again. For a long time, no one made me as happy as Luciano. Not even Jefferson, if I'm honest with myself. With his 25 years, Luciano is a very experienced lover. For Sunday, we are planning to go to the beach first, and later to the feria in Fuengirola. After we made love on Sunday morning, I get up, shower, and get myself with Max on the way to the little supermarket around the corner. It opens 7 days a week to offer fresh bread and other tasty things for breakfast. Everything is perfect, and I'm happier than I have been in a long time. After breakfast, we end up in bed again until I am pressing to go to the beach. But suddenly, Luciano's behavior changes. He starts talking about that he has brought no swimming trunks and proposes to go home to get them. Don't even think about it. I know you are ready. If you go, you are gone for the next 5 hours. and we can forget this Sunday. We can buy trunks at the beach, I tell him. But I feel that Luciano has changed. He pulls me into his arms and begins to explain to me that he still has to wash his clothes, since he has to work the next day. Okay, we'll go together, and I'll wait till your laundry is washed. We don't have to go to the beach, but at least we can still go to the feria, is my suggestion. Luciano tries to convince me it is better if I go to the beach while he goes home to wash his laundry. I promise you, I'm back at 7 on the spot with you, and then we go to the feria. Yes, but you've also promised that we could spend this weekend together. I'm arguing now. My good mood is gone as Luciano wants to kiss me before he leaves. I turn my face away from him. I go to the beach and try to convince myself that he will indeed come back, and I see everything all too tight. But instinctively I know that I will not see him again this Sunday. Around 5:30 I'm on my way home, shower, put makeup, and dress the new sexy two-piece I have bought recently, hoping that Luciano will be on time, or even keep his promise. At 7, of course, he's not at the door. Instead, he calls to tell me that something has intervened and he cannot come back today. One of his friends has a problem and he needs to help him. I am boiling with rage and scream at him over the telephone, "You can stay with your friends or girlfriends. With us it's over. I don't want to see you again." He begs and pleads me not to be angry. He would come the next day and explain everything. "Don't make the effort. We are finished. I don't want to see you here any more. I'm not a silly little girl you can play games with, but a grown woman. Make your games with others, but not with me. Adios." "Is that your last word?" Luciano asked, and I confirmed. With that, the line is dead. I feel lousy, crying to myself. In the morning I was so happy, and now all over and done with. My sadness turns into anger and defiance. I'm not going to stay here tonight alone, crying and suffering. I'm going out. Who is Luciano anyway? There are also other men. And after I told myself this, I call my admirer, Rita. "Is your offer still standing to invite me to dinner?" "If it is, I have time this evening." Of course the offer still stands, and Rita promises to be at the meeting point, a fish restaurant, in 45 minutes. And Rita is on time. Desperately, I try to run the conversation, but basically I just feel bad and know that I'm doing wrong to Rita. After the meal, of which I hardly take a mouthful, Rita suggests to take a walk along the beach. Since I don't want to disappoint him, I agree. Also, I would now prefer to hide myself at home. This appointment is a mistake. We stroll along the beach while Rita tells me some funny episodes of his life. Sure, he noticed that I'm very depressed and tries to cheer me up. At an ice cream parlor, we stop, and he invites me to a sundae. As I listlessly poke around in the ice, a rose seller comes along. Rita buys a rose, and I feel like crying again when he gives it to me. Not long ago, Luciano had given me a rose. I'm just relieved when we finally say goodbye and I can go home. Nothing I would rather do than call Luciano to apologize for my harsh words. But this my pride would not allow me to do. I cry myself to sleep that night. The next morning, as I look at the rose I had put in a vase on the table, asking myself for the thousandth time why I fell in love again and again with the wrong guys. Angry with Luciano, with myself, and everything else, I ponder over coffee what I can do to distract myself. And so I decide to go to the internet cafe. There I find some emails. The first one is from Rita, thanking me for the wonderful evening, hoping for a repeat. The next one is of Celia, writing that she, Carlos, and the guys from the band would be happy if I could come to Sao Paulo. Defiantly I think, why not? Michael prefers to spend part of his vacation in El Palo, and nothing happened with the job yet. So I decide spontaneously that this is the best way to gain distance and forget about Luciano. I check for a cheap flight, and when I find one, I book without thinking much about it. Afterwards, I go to El Palo to sit in a coffee shop, studying the jobs in the newspapers, which are available to read for free. One ad especially catches my eye. Personal staff wanted for a car rental in the center of Malaga. Immediately, I call the listed number. The boss of the place answers, and we agree on an appointment for an interview the same day. The interview runs optimally. The boss and I like each other instantly, and the work is just the right thing for me. Office and outside work, which means bringing cars to tourists at the hotels and picking them up again, taking them to the car wash, resolving insurance claims and accidents, writing invoices, and so on. For this job, my language skills come to benefit, because mainly the foreign tourists are renting cars. The salary of 1,200 euros is just right for me, because more than that I can simply not expect in Spain. The high salaries from the past I earned in Germany I will never achieve here. I plead to the boss to consider me when making his choice, because as a single mother I need the job very badly. He promises to call in about 2 weeks. This time I'm sure that it will work out and go home exhilarated. But there again overcomes me a howling misery when I see the rose. At 10 o'clock at night my phone rings, and I jump immediately to answer it, hoping it is Luciano. But it is only Doris. "Hello, Doris." I sniffle into the phone and pour my heart out to her, crying. But instead of pitying me, she tells me, "You see everything much too narrow. That way you will drive every man away." She's just stunning in her frankness. "Listen, Doris, it was Luciano who twice broke his promise," I protest. As we speak, I hear a knocking, which indicates that another caller is on the line. However, the number is not visible. I kick Doris out of the line to accept the other call, and in fact, this time it is Luciano, asking me where I am. Perplexed, I reply, "I'm home. I'll be there in 10 minutes. With that, he's gone. I glance at the rose. Shit, I think. Where to go with that rose? Without further ado, I throw it in the fridge the same moment I hear a knock on my door. Running to open it, I almost stumble over Max, who runs in the same direction. Then I fall, relieved, around Luciano's neck. Gently, he directs me into the living room, and we sit on the sofa. "I have to say a few words to you," he begins. "You don't seriously think that you can get rid of me so easy, huh? I want you, and I will stay with you. But please don't put me under pressure," he says, serious as never before. "Luciano, do you really believe that our relationship has a future? I am 44 years old. You are 25. This can't work out if we continue." Now I confess to him my true age, but he seems not the least bit impressed. Instead, he pulls me into his arms and kisses me. "As long as you want me, I'll stay with you," he whispers in my ear. It occurs to me that he still wears his working clothes. He has come directly after work. Our reconciliation is indescribably beautiful. In the morning, he's looking for something to drink in the fridge, and with his cheeky grin, he looks around the corner and asks, "Do roses last longer if you put them in the fridge?" He feels so sure of me that it doesn't interest him the least where the rose came from, and I just have to laugh. During the next few days, Michael is at home, so I meet with Luciano at the beach, or he comes late at night when Michael is already asleep. Our first crisis has brought us even closer together. Between us, the word love is never mentioned, but I'm happy with Luciano and feel that he too is with me. I already regret my hasty booking for the flight to Brazil. but since I didn't book any travel cancelling insurance, I would lose the full travel costs if I don't fly. So I persuade myself that it's only 10 days of separation, and resolve not to go and see Jefferson again. As long as it lasts, I just want to be happy with Luciano, and I'm not going to cheat on him. Doris assures me during our phone calls over and over again that there is no guarantee for a relationship, regardless of whether age difference or not. And she's absolutely right. Eventually, Luciano will turn away from me one day and prefer a younger woman. But as happy as I am now with him, it's worth it. So I decide finally to introduce Michael and Luciano after my return from Brazil. I want Luciano to also be officially a part of my life. One thing, however, is still pressing on my stomach. Luciano will never believe me that I'm not intending to see Jefferson, because without words a great deal, I realized that he sees only in Jefferson a serious rival. I decide to use in this case a white lie. Michael is unbearable in the next few days, and we find ourselves constantly in dispute. If I ask him for his help with housework, I get the most impossible answers. I attribute this to his adolescence. Also, it is sometimes very painful when he has his temper. A week before I fly, his bad temper reached its climax. Like often now, we end up in an argument because of a little thing. Michael smashes a cup out of his hand and yells at me. I'm fed up here. I'm out and gone. Slams the door behind him as he leaves the apartment. Perplexed and sad, I sit on my sofa and cry. What's wrong lately? Am I too lenient with him and let him have too much freedom? I hardly recognize my son, who has always been very loving and, especially since we lived in Spain, very respectful towards me. 3 hours have passed, and I'm very concerned. Taking the car, I search for him, and finally find him on a soccer field nearby. Reluctantly, he responds to my call, coming hurriedly to the car. I asked him to enter, and again tears run down my face. Nothing gives me more pain than a fight with my son, whom I love above all. This I tell him, and that he scares me when he threatens me to run away from home. He cannot really give a reason for his irritability, and finally hugs me as an excuse. This evening, when I give him the news that I'm going to fly to Sao Paulo, he agrees with me that a little distance from each other will be good for both of us. We agree I will take him the Wednesday before my flight on 21st of July to El Palo, and I make him promise me not to tell Chris where I'm going, or better avoid any talk about me, because my life has nothing to do with him anymore. A few weeks ago was a big row between us once again, and I got carried away and threatened him with the fact that I could easily put him in jail. He knows this because he still has a process for fraud pending. I could testify against him. Since that time, I dropped Michael off outside the door in order to avoid meeting Chris. I'm adding, stay with Miguel if there are any problems with Chris. I can always count on Candy, Miguel's mother, but Michael prefers to stay with Chris, even if it is only for eating and sleeping. During the day, he's out and about with Miguel. What are you going to do with Max? Michael asked. I'll bring him Friday to a kennel in Rincon de la Victoria. Michael wants to come along, and we arrange to go together. I have my hands full with travel arrangements, buying gifts for Celia, Carlos, and the boys of the band. Even the parents of Celia and Carlos are pleased with my coming. For me, I buy clothes to go out because I'll be most of the time with the band on the road. As Luciano picks me up Tuesday evening for one of our walks on the beach, he tells me his aunt, Ivana, will organize a typical Argentine barbecue. A churrasco next Saturday, and I'm invited. So Luciano has told his family about me. For me, this is yet another proof of his love. But now, I must confess, Luciano, I would accept the invitation with pleasure, but I can't. Saturday I will fly to London. I lie with a heavy heart. Luciano reacts calmly, but asks what I'm going to do in London and when I booked the flight, because for him it all comes naturally very surprising. The flight I booked when I thought it was over between us. I wanted distance to you and decided to visit friends. This is the honest part of my answer. The rest is a lie, and that gives me a guilty conscience. But I quickly forget as we stroll along the beach hand in hand, stopping here and there for a kiss, and eventually sitting on one of the sun benches with my back against his chest in his arms, looking up into the starry sky. My first thought, it is almost too good to be true. Luciano is so wonderfully incomplicated and yet romantic. All of a sudden, though, overcomes me an uneasy feeling, almost eerie, like a premonition that this is one of the last happy moments. Luciano distracts these thoughts, as always, very quickly, and I'm just happily in love. He tells me we cannot see each other the next day, but on Thursday he will come directly from work. I suggest cooking for us. That sounds good, he replies enthusiastically. He promises to call me the next day, but I know already that he will do it anyway, because he calls me every day in his lunch breaks. Wednesday, before my journey, I take Michael to El Palo and plead him once again not to say anything to Chris about me. We embrace for goodbye, and I'll call after him. Until Friday then, okay? Afterwards, I do the shopping for my dinner with Luciano. At home, I store everything in the fridge and go to the beach to swim a little in the sea. Every time I see the beach and the sea, I'm overcome by a true sense of happiness. If I'm just back again, I will appreciate my paradise here even more, especially after the ugly Sao Paulo. I don't like this gigantic city. Only the people there are terrific. In my mind, I'm going through it all again. Rent is paid for August. Michael is looked after. Max will be from Friday on in the kennel. And Luciano? Will our relationship survive the 10 days separation? The Thursday night turns out to be perfect, even if Luciano is late 2 hours like always, and in working clothes. He adores my cooking, and I'm surprised by his talent for drawing when he makes a freehand sketch of the structural building he works on. Out of the blue, he changes the subject to tell me that he wants to fly to Argentina for Christmas to visit his mother and sisters. And I want you to come with me. For a minute, I'm speechless. Are you serious? If I didn't mean it, I would have hardly mentioned it, tonta, he says. This night we don't get to sleep, making love the whole night, kissing and caressing each other. Both of us tired, I take Luciano Friday morning to his home so he can change his working clothes in time. Rita, please don't be angry, but I think it's better if we don't see each other today. I'm totally tired, but when I'm with you I just don't get any sleep. I'll call you today, and tomorrow I'll come to see you. Before you fly, I want to see you again. It's the only thing he speaks this morning. I totally agree with him, because I feel just as tired. After my return, I take Max for one last walk on the beach before we leave for El Palo. Once there, I sit down in a beach bar and call Michael on his cell phone. 10 minutes later, he comes up to me, this beautiful, mature boy, almost grown to be a young man, who is now a lot taller than me. When I see him, my heart fills with pride for my son. But what bothers me is what he tells me now. Mama, Chris has now a strange guy living with him in the house. One of his men. The guy scares me. Again I plead with Michael to spend the 10 days with Candy, but Michael refuses. We drive to the kennel where the manager shows us the place in a good and tidy impression. The moment of parting, one of the helping craft comes and takes Max out of my arms, as tears run down my face. Mom, it's only for just less than 2 weeks. Michael tries to comfort me. Actually, Max is Michael's dog, but now Michael is busy with other things, and his interest is somewhat diminished. For me, however, Max is another child. Before we finally leave the kennel once again, I'll go to the place where Max is locked. Max doesn't come to the bars, doesn't even look in my direction when I call him. It seems that he takes very badly that I leave him imprisoned in a kennel for the first time. In silence we make our way back to El Palo. There I invite Michael to his favorite dish, crepes. While we eat, I tell him for the first time about Luciano, and that I wish they get to know each other and, so I hope, will be friends. Mom, you must know what you're doing, but I don't want to see you sad again if this doesn't work out, is Michael's commentary. I explain that to me everything is fine at the moment, and I'm very happy with Luciano. Michael, there is no guarantee for a relationship lasting a lifetime. Should we break up one day, I am prepared to take the pain of separation, because I think it's worth it. I show Michael the photos I took of Luciano and stored in my digital camera. Michael admits, well, as long as you are happy, it's okay with me. I hug my son and give him a kiss. He tries to ward off in embarrassment. While we talk, I take a few photos of Michael. I have the feeling that he's relieved. The issue of Brazil is off the table finally, and thanks to Luciano, the Jefferson chapter as well. A short while later, I set Michael off at Miguel's place. Once again, I hug my son. He remarks with a grin, "You act as if you're going away for a whole year. Man, this is not the first time you went away without me." He gets out of the car, waves at me briefly, changes the roadside, and disappears into the front yard of the house where Miguel lives, and where we have stayed about 2 years before we moved into the house on the beach at El Palo. This is the last time I see my son. Luciano is exceptionally punctual this Saturday morning. Extraordinarily good-looking, in new jeans and a shirt freshly shaved and perfumed. He is almost unrecognizable, and I realize actually once again how attractive he is. Most of the time I only see him in working clothes. My things are all packed and I'm ready. The rest of the time, several hours, are reserved only for Luciano. After my return, I wish that you and Michael get to know each other. Is that okay for you? I ask him. Sure, it's okay. I do want to meet and know your son. I embrace Luciano, appreciating once again that he's so wonderfully uncomplicated. He pulls me closer to him and begins to dance with me to the Spanish ballad in the CD player. But after a few minutes he laughs awkwardly and lets go of me. Apparently this is too much sentimentality. He complains of a pain in his back, whereupon I push him gently into the bedroom and onto the bed, signaling him to lie on his stomach, so I can give his back a massage. "You are not just super sexy, but also a great masseuse," he says, turns around, pulls me to him, and we make love one last time before I leave. It is time to order a taxi. Luciano proposes to pay for the taxi when we go first to Diana, to set him off there, and I will continue alone to the airport. I not agree, but I'm relieved. I had already feared he would accompany me to the airport, because there he would have known about my lie. On the way, Luciano is unusually quiet and simply holds his arm around me. Does he sense that I'm lying to him? In Juliana, however, I have tears in my eyes. What's that, Rita? It's only 10 days, and I'm here waiting for you, he whispers softly in my ear, kissing me goodbye. We promise to call each other, and then he gets out. The taxi drives on, and I catch a last glimpse of Luciano.